Central African Time. Thank you for continuing to stream audio visually with us on our Facebook page. Just like Channel Africa if you haven't done so already. Otherwise, we're happy to have you join us via satellite on channel 802 on the DSTV audio bouquet. So people often talk about funding as the key to being able to grow a business. But for many entrepreneurs, locally as it were, success comes down to who you know, who supports you, and the community that surrounds you at that particular time. BrownSense founder Mzuzukile Soni recently reflected on this, saying the platform that he created, that being BrownSense, of course, became the greatest asset when it comes to, you know, technology and people being able to meet each other on that platform. So Brown Sense continues to create opportunities for black owned businesses, and we're going to look at this. We're going to look at the story of Brown Sense and look at why strong business ecosystems matter and how entrepreneurs can actually build networks that create lasting value. A pleasure to have Mzuzukile on the line with me, of course, in his capacity as the founder of Brown Sense, Scale Lex Advisory, and the Startup Legal. A pleasure to speak to you this morning. Welcome.
Hi, Mmatsheko. Thank you for having me, and good morning to your listeners and your viewers.
Thank you. Thank you, Mzu. I think, you know, for many people, we have been affected directly or indirectly by the work of BrownSense. I want to unpack the story of BrownSense because it really has changed lives. As one of South Africa's largest online communities connecting black entrepreneurs and professionals and consumers to really find themselves and find the right partnerships and access opportunities. How on earth
Yeah.
did you come up with this brilliant idea?
I think I'll try to keep that as short as possible. So
Mm,
the story, I think it starts way back from 2012, 2011,
mm,
uh, when I had this idea to create an online directory, but for township-based businesses. But even within township-based businesses, the idea was to find the unicorns. So basically, that if you find or maybe you discover that it's a township based business, it's a wow moment. I didn't know I've been using their product or their services because there's really no need, for them to even market themselves in that manner. Life happened, and I put my I think it was going to be called Township Biz.biz back then, right? So I procrastinated. And then fast forward to 2015, a couple of incidents happened around becoming more conscientized. One of them, I think Brown Sense could have been initially conceived as a brown dolls business
mm, mm.
because I had an idea, that there's not so many brown dolls. And if you see them, they look funny. They look very, I don't know how to put it, like they're not pleasing when you look at them. And I thought, let's take that concept. I don't know if you've ever seen someone so beautiful that you're like, hey, I wish they would make a doll just like that or an animated character just like that,
Yeah.
and the idea was going to be called Beautiful Brown Babies. And in my head it was going to spin off into other areas, from hair products, what do you call this, clothes, and so forth. Again, it never got implemented up until later that year in 2015, when the name Brown Sense came to my mind. And the reason for the name was moving away from the descriptor black,
Mm,
because, look, anywhere in the continent, we are hardly black, in terms of a color description. And also the negative connotations that come with, the word black, from black male, black sheep, and so forth.
yeah. Yeah.
And intentionally, I thought, let's do the brown, and then the sense is a play on word between sense for money, but also sense for common sense, as in it makes sense,
Mm,
right?
mhm.
And when I started Brown Sense in 2016, in January that year, there were two preceding incidents in the social media space. I'm just trying to remember which one came first. It was the Chris Hart tweet and the Penny Sparrow Facebook post. I don't know if you remember those quite racially, driven and divisive posts
That sounds
where
familiar. Yeah.
what, yeah, the one called basically, labeled Black people monkeys. The other questioned our intellectual capability to work in the finance sector. And people got, very emotional in the social media space. So the night I started the Facebook group, I had written this very long Facebook post, when it was kind of emotional, angry. When is this thing going to end, and all that. But thankfully, I had a moment to pause to ask myself, what am I going to achieve, or what am I trying to achieve with this? Am I trying to get people heated up? We have this conversation. Hopefully, someone will feel guilty enough, to change whatever. But I thought I've never seen that happening. So because I was on Facebook, I rerouted my post, which I never posted, by the way, to creating the Facebook group that was the birth of BrownSense. So there was no strategic planning, brainstorming to say this is how it's going to. It was a moment in time, and I think emotions at that that particular time and where I was, emotionally and mentally, and that's essentially how it started. And the thinking behind it was, we are the ones that prop up the very same system that we complain about, right? So we buy from them, usually
Yeah.
because there's not so much choice. It's convenient. They are able to give us lesser prices. For example, I once bought a tray of eggs from a BrownSense member. The price was very, high in comparison to any known retailer. So for me, it was more of a commitment. We need to do this, even if it's inconvenient at this moment.
Right.
So, so the thinking was, how do we create a space where buying black becomes the norm? So it's no longer an activation, a hype, a hashtag, a what do they call this? Black child, you can do it, and all that.
Yeah.
Basically, moving away from anything where we even lower our, like, support me, but I've got value to provide. And you see the value that you can derive, from transacting or buying from my business. I will pause there, but that's essentially the story behind it in terms of how, eventually it was launched on the Facebook group.
That is a very wholesome story. I mean, you tracing it back to what, a good 15, 16 years ago when the initial seed was planted, and how, your social observations around business and the black business ecosystem are being shaped, and you wanted to get in there with a solution. I mean, it's really just such a wonderful story. In fact, there's an entire book there. Okay, there's an entire BrownSense book that we are all waiting for with breath that is bated. Oh my goodness. And Mzuzukile Soni is on the line with me, and we're really unpacking how he was able to come up with BrownSense, which really contributed to the success of black business ecosystems, and really, and I like what you said around, trying to, and I think it's exactly what BrownSense ultimately did, and conscientized people to make it a normal thing to just consciously want to buy black. Okay, and not think twice or three times, or look for a hashtag, look for we're coming for everything before you do it. Just doing it, which is so important. 21 minutes into 10 a.m. We come back after the break.
Madapiri pazochitika. Madapiri pazochitika.
Bungolona za maendedwe anthu mu chigawo chakumwera kwa Africa la Summit ladzudzula nkhanza zomwe magulu ena mu dziko la South Africa akuchita kwa anthu obwera opanda mapepala omwe akukhala mu dzikolo. Mungalankhulepo zotani pa zomwe zikuchitika ku South Africa pomwe anthu obwera omwe akukhala opanda mapepala akuthamangitsidwa?
Nkhani imeneyi ndi nkhani yomvetsa chisoni kwambiri, chifukwa ikuchitika pamene anthu ambiri akudziwa bwino kunena kuti munthu aliyense kaya ochoka ku dziko lanji amakhala munthu waufulu kuti apeze chimene akufuna, chifukwa anthu amachoka m'mayiko osiyanasiyana chifukwa cha mavuto osiyanasiyana. Ndi zimene zikuchitika ku South Africa ndi zinthu zomvetsa chisoni.
zochitika pa nthawi ya 6 koloko kufikira 7 koloko madzulo, lolemba mpaka lachisanu ndi Madaphiri.
The Practice on the Journal.
22 minutes into 10 a.m. in Central African time. We're talking all things BrownSense with the founder of the platform, Mzuzukile Soni, and he was really just taking some time to unpack the story of BrownSense, how it works, and how it contributed to Black business success in the ecosystem of business. As we noted, it's such an important story. I think tracing it back to, almost 20 years ago, really, 16 years ago, when he planted the seed for this idea, and it continued to grow and evolve. And because he's such a free spirit, he just let it grow legs the way it was meant to grow legs. But Mzu, over the years, I'd like to get a sense of what tangible difference BrownSense has been able to make, in your view, in terms of opening up opportunities, in terms of people being able to access markets that they could never imagine being able to access before the platform was launched.
Yeah. To be honest with you, that's something that's really been that's blown my mind, because at that time, I would never say BrownSense was the first of its kind. Mm-hmm. I was actually a member of one other group, I think on Facebook, a WhatsApp group, similar in terms of the whole buy black, way of thinking. Mm. So why I say what blows my mind is that when I launched the group, the reaction was as if it's the first of its kind. And I was like, okay, what is it that makes it different? Because it doesn't have any story to tell as yet, or there's no, we've done 1, 2, 3, and here are the receipts. People were very much excited to join. People were like, oh my God, this is what we need, and that kind of stuff. So I think the early days, let's say the honeymoon phase, was kind of like people had been holding their breath and waiting for something like this, right? And I think maybe that's what led to the interest, what led to the excitement, and also the buy-in, in terms of, yes, I came with the idea, but I've always seen myself as a vessel, right? So if I had not launched it, one way or another, it was going to find a way to to be birthed, because I think it's something that needed to happen. And the reason maybe was that we intentionally created a space when everyone could not only buy or sell, but there was an element of I can learn something. So I'll give you an example where I myself learned something, right? Someone, I can't remember the post, but it had to do, I think this member was asking about how to cost or how to price a product. So let's say I make archer or whatever that I make, I have to buy raw materials and so forth and put it together. So there's already expenses that have gone in, and expenses that I can quantify, but there's also expenses that are a bit difficult to, that might be electricity. How do I track how much electricity went into the creation of one item, and that kind of stuff. Someone commented with, not so detailed, but I could see that there's a formula to it, and it sort of made sense. When I think I was in high school, one of my older friends, who went into tertiary before I got there, I think he was studying cost management or something along those lines, and I used to think, what a boring sounding course, why would you go and study that? Then I was like, oh, this is what Bulelani went to school to.
Yeah.
This is what they do. Like, there's someone that has the expertise, the know-how, the education to do those things, right? And for me, I was learning, kind of like what the internet has done largely. The education is there, and it's a question of one's hunger and commitment to access it. So there's that, and then there's the collaborations that we've seen without us saying so and so. I think you can do well if you collaborate with Smang Mang within the platform, right? They met each other either on the platform or when we launched markets later in 2016. People saw each other. We used to have a trader that sold dolls called they're gonna kill me now because I'm forgetting the name. Loli, was it Loli? Sorry, guys.
No,
Sorry.
for now.
But they teamed up with someone that made African print clothing when this designer was now clothing one of their dolls, and that became a partnership that they worked on without any influence from us, but we just created the space to, for them to do that. If you know Ligao, the founder of Drip Footwear,
Yeah.
I would say he launched it on the platform in the sense that, in his own words, the first post he made announcing I've just launched this sneaker footwear. It's called Drip. This is how you buy it. He posted that on BrownSense. And I think because there was a captive audience looking for, those kinds of businesses, it picked up, and became what it became. And I think when we look at those success stories, coming from something that we built, I would say, from a bootstrap approach, because there's no government department that's funding us. There's no corporate big brother or big sister behind this. It's just a commitment. It's just a drive, and basically using what we have, in terms of resources and so forth, and expertise. And the content, you would say it's user-generated content, right? Because people post in the group, people will respond now and then. We'll come in and introduce a topic or get people to, comment or think a certain way or question things and so forth. So I think in terms of the impact, sure, it's very difficult to to quantify because, and this is something that we are working on, and soon we will be announcing. When we are able to have a platform. Yes, it's got an element of being an e-commerce platform, but I think the last 10 years have opened our minds and our eyes in terms of the best mechanisms in terms of what to do, what to launch to the market, where we are able to pull out what you call a record to say through BrownSense X amount of transactions were enabled. Because look at it this way: there's the Facebook, where even today, actually this morning before our interview, I saw someone commenting on a I think it was a 2017 post, which means they went to the group and they typed a keyword or a search word.
Wow. Wow.
It was
Wow.
whatever they are looking for. Do you
Yeah.
understand? Then they commented to say, "Do you still have this? How much is the price?"
Wow.
So there's the present day. I'm posting today, 15 2026. There's someone who's like, "I'm not going to wait for my post to be approved. Let me see what's been posted, and maybe I can find it."
Okay.
Um, that too, where you're like, yo, people. What I can tell you is that we've made millionaires, and when I say we, I'm not saying it in a egotistic, we did this. You guys wouldn't have done it without us. We've created the space to show that when there's a commitment, and people buy into a shared vision, shared values, there's a
Anything
lot
is
more that
possible. Anything is
correct.
possible. Yeah. Okay. You know
Yeah.
what? I'd like us to continue because I think you've opened up this practice in a way that we can look at what the difference is between having a network and actually building an ecosystem, which is essentially what
Mm,
BrownSense has been able to achieve, and looking at other themes of how people can look beyond just self promotion, but also building a kind of platform where people are also able to create opportunities for others. That's very, very
mm,
important. Okay,
yes,
Mzu
yes.
is going to be continuing the practice with us. There's so much more to unpack. But before we continue, we get into the latest in sports. Figilele Ngwati standing by.